Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the constant stimulation of modern life? You're not alone. We live in an era where our senses are perpetually bombarded. The incessant pings from our smartphones, the addictive allure of social media, the adrenaline rush of gaming, the comfort of excessive eating, and the escape offered by alcohol or drugs. These are but a few of the stimuli that our brains grapple with on a daily basis. These activities, while exciting or comforting in the moment, flood our brains with dopamine, a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. However, the constant exposure to these high levels of dopamine can lead to desensitization. It becomes harder for us to find pleasure in simpler, less stimulating activities. This desensitization can leave us feeling dissatisfied, unmotivated, and struggle to concentrate. But what if there was a way to reset, to regain control? This brings us to the concept of a dopamine detox. Dopamine, known as the feel-good neurotransmitter, plays a crucial role in our ability to feel pleasure and reward. But too much of it can wreak havoc on our mental well-being. Now let's delve into the science of dopamine detox. The term might sound a bit intimidating, but it's actually quite straightforward. Picture your brain as a high-tech sound system. Dopamine acts like the volume dial, amplifying the pleasure signals we receive from various activities. These could be anything from enjoying a slice of chocolate cake to scrolling through social media or winning a video game. However, just like a sound system that's constantly playing at full volume, our brains too can get overwhelmed. When we're constantly exposed to high levels of dopamine, our brains adapt by becoming less sensitive to it. This is called dopamine desensitization. What does this mean for us? Well, when our brains become desensitized to dopamine, we start needing more and more stimulation to feel the same level of pleasure. The activities that once brought us joy, like reading a book, going for a walk, or simply spending time with loved ones, might not seem as enticing anymore. We might find ourselves feeling dissatisfied, unmotivated, and unable to concentrate. This is where the concept of dopamine detox comes in. The idea is to voluntarily abstain from high dopamine activities for a certain period. By doing this, we allow our brains to reset the dopamine sensitivity, much like turning down the volume on our sound system. The goal isn't to completely stop the production of dopamine. After all, dopamine is vital for us to feel motivated and to enjoy life. Instead, the aim is to balance our dopamine levels, to regain our ability to find joy in the simpler, less intense activities. So, the idea behind a dopamine detox is to reset the brain's reward system by temporarily reducing dopamine spikes. By doing this, we can enhance our focus, improve our overall well-being, and ultimately regain control of our mental health. So how does a dopamine detox work? It's not about eliminating dopamine entirely, but rather about reducing overstimulation. This process, quite simply, is about taking a break from the things that typically flood our brains with dopamine. To embark on this detox, one must first identify the high dopamine activities in their life. These are often the things that bring us immediate pleasure or reward. They could be anything from scrolling through social media, playing video games, to indulging in excessive eating, or even the consumption of alcohol or drugs. Once identified, the next step is to consciously abstain from these activities for a set period of time. This might sound daunting, but it's essential to remember that the detox is not about deprivation, but about rebalancing. It's about creating a space for our brains to recalibrate, to adjust to a level of stimulation that is more sustainable and less intense. During this period of abstention, it's encouraged to engage in activities that are perceived as low dopamine. These are activities that don't provide an immediate rush of pleasure or reward, but instead offer a slow and steady sense of satisfaction. Meditation, for instance, is a powerful tool for this. It helps us to quieten the mind, to focus on the present moment, and to cultivate a sense of inner peace. Reading, too, is an excellent low-dopamine activity. It allows us to immerse ourselves in different worlds, to learn new things, and to engage our minds in a deep and meaningful way. Spending time in nature, whether it's going for a walk in the park or simply sitting in the garden, can also be incredibly beneficial. It allows us to disconnect from the digital world and to reconnect with the natural one. And then there's the practice of mindfulness. This is about being fully present in the moment, about noticing and appreciating the simple things in life. It's about slowing down and savoring each experience rather than constantly seeking the next dopamine hit. The goal is to mitigate the effects of excessive stimulation, leading to increased sensitivity to dopamine. It's about finding balance, enhancing focus, and ultimately improving overall well-being. Like any new wellness concept, dopamine detox has its critics. They argue it oversimplifies the complex role dopamine plays in our lives. Indeed, dopamine isn't just a pleasure switch that can be turned on and off. It is a neurotransmitter intricately involved in various brain functions, from motor control to mood regulation, and even the experience of pain. Critics point out that the concept of a dopamine detox is based on a reductionist view of neuroscience. The brain is an intricate network of billions of neurons, and dopamine is just one of many neurotransmitters at work. They argue that it's oversimplified to suggest that abstaining from high dopamine activities for a short period can reset the brain's reward system. Furthermore, they assert that there's limited empirical evidence to support the effectiveness of a dopamine detox. Most of the support for this practice comes from anecdotal reports, not rigorous scientific studies. But despite the lack of hard evidence, it's hard to ignore the chorus of individuals who report positive experiences. Those who've undertaken a dopamine detox recount feeling more focused, less stressed, and more satisfied with life. They claim to experience a renewed appreciation for simpler, less stimulating activities. The world, they say, becomes a little brighter, a little more interesting. They talk about a calmness of mind, a clarity of thought that they hadn't experienced in a long time. Some even report improved sleep, better mood, and enhanced productivity. They claim that by reducing the constant bombardment of dopamine-triggering stimuli, they've been able to cultivate a deeper sense of mindfulness and presence in their daily lives. So what do we make of these contrasting views? It's clear the science of dopamine detox is still evolving, and more research is needed. But in the meantime, it's also evident that many people are finding value in this practice. Whether you decide to try a dopamine detox or not, it's always important to approach any wellness practice with personal goals and health considerations in mind. After all, wellness isn't a one-size-fits-all concept, it's a personal journey, one that requires understanding and kindness towards oneself.